Hey everyone, welcome to an extremely quick update video I'm making because something really funny has happened since my last upload 3 weeks ago. For those of you that haven't watched that, you don't necessarily have to in order to understand this video, as I'll be explaining things as we go, but I would still recommend watching that one first. So, as a reminder, I made a video exposing a series of scam websites advertising their services by purchasing an inundation of ads on YouTube, and I especially focused on this one company called myIQ that offered a ridiculously fake IQ test that gives a score over 110 to literally every single person that takes it. By the way, this is not the part 2 I was talking about in my latest community post. This is more of a part 1.5 that I wasn't even planning on making until a couple of days ago. This video exists because as I began editing part 2, I went to the myIQ website in order to obtain more footage, and I noticed that the website had suddenly changed. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence coinciding with the release of my video, but the deeper I looked into this, the more evidence I found that it wasn't. Today, I'm going to be going over all of the major changes I spotted and how the majority of them correlate with very specific criticisms I brought up in my previous video. Yes, you're hearing me right. A stupid furry with 200 subscribers was able to bully a scam company into making their website slightly less bad by making just one YouTube video. Journalism at its finest. Right before we get into it, I want to make it clear that myIQ isn't a website that changes very often. I've been aware of it long before I even knew I wanted to make a video about it because of that stupid Nikola Tesla ad that appeared on my YouTube homepage constantly, and the only way that the website had changed previously at all was that the question count would frequently fluctuate for whatever reason. That's why I find it hard to believe that the website making all of these major changes all of a sudden is just a coincidence. One of the first changes you can spot is actually what made me fully realize that they did all of this as a response to my video. At several points on the website, including the front page, there was this horizontally scrolling list displaying several magazines, which subtextually gives viewers the implication that these organizations supported what myIQ was doing. However, this wasn't true because if you looked into this any further, it becomes very clear that these were just paid press releases and not actual reviews. Now, on the new website, they added text next to this list that clarifies that they aren't being endorsed by these magazines. This is a really good change, but this seems like a weird thing to decide to do out of the blue. Perhaps I'm just being self-indulgent, but also definitely feels like a direct response to its respective segment from my video. Before we even start the quiz, we can spot a lot of changes they made to the instructions page. First of all, they changed the question total from 40 to 60. There isn't any specific segment from my previous video that really relates to this, although they did fix the actual question count not aligning with the instructions page, which I did make a short joke about previously. Next, at question 4 out of 39, yes you heard me right, apparently one of the questions had the call-in sick today. While the second instruction list item is exactly the same, the third was changed from you can skip the question and return back later to every answer counts towards your final IQ score. Interestingly enough, they did actually remove the ability to go back to previous questions on the quiz. I'm not sure why you would ever want to remove that because it's a useful feature if you misclick or change your mind, but okay. I'm not entirely sure why they now feel the need to clarify that every question counts, but I think it might be referring to when I made fun of the fact that many of the old quiz questions had absolutely nothing to do with IQ. I prefer learning through hands-on experience. I'm sorry? This is a subjective question. There's no objective way to measure differences in preference. Also, what does this have to do with IQ? Finally, at the bottom, they both expanded upon the disclaimer text and made the text larger, which I'm very happy that they did. I think that it's important to make the disclaimer text larger than it originally was because it makes it a lot less likely that people will skip over it, and it makes it easier to read for people with vision issues. Here are the clips of me bringing it up specifically. Apparently you can just say whatever you want about anyone as long as you put that it was a joke in teeny tiny unappealing text that most people never read. How is this legal? Now, do they warn you about this? Technically yes, but it's that tiny text hidden at the bottom of the screen that people with vision issues can't read once again. Now moving on to the actual quiz. We can see that they almost completely obliterated all of the questions that I criticized as not being related to IQ. The only remnants of the past left are a couple of those pattern matching questions at the very start, which you can still cheat on by using the inspect tool. All of the questions after those are a lot more similar to the ones on actual IQ tests. They also got rid of those stupid pop-ups that were interspersed throughout the original version of the quiz. Throughout the test, we get interrupted by these annoying pop-ups whose only intent is to suck up to the quiz taker in an attempt to make them feel like they're smarter than they actually are. Next, for whatever reason, no matter what I do, after answering the final question, they tell me that I didn't answer adequately, and then they send me back to the start. Now, this error actually did exist in the original quiz, but it only appeared if you finished the quiz by jitter clicking through all of the questions. The first time I went through the new quiz, I had gone through it by spam clicking on the first 59 questions and then waiting 10 minutes on the final question before submitting, so I assumed they had just added another anti-spam measure. Thus, on my second time going through the quiz, I decided to painstakingly wait 1 to 2 minutes before answering each individual question, taking me a total of 71 minutes to do. After submitting for a second time, I still got the error, so I then guessed that they added a new security measure of blocking users who get through by randomly clicking answers like I was. So, after exhausting all of my lazy methods, I decided that I was going to have to actually try on the quiz in order to proceed. And I hate to admit it, but I actually had a lot of fun completing the new quiz. Some of the questions were really enjoyable to figure out, such as numbers 40, 48, and 50. It kind of makes me wish whoever made these quizzes would just release a puzzle game instead of doing all this murky nonsense. Even though the questions did make me stop and actually use logic, I still don't really believe this IQ test is legitimate. In comparison to other quizzes based on actual IQ tests, the difficulty of the myIQ test is just all over the place. It's supposed to slowly get harder over time, but it honestly just feels like a gamble every time I went to a new question. For example, look at the last 2 questions. These were some of the most obvious questions on the entire test, come on. Another reason the quiz is still most likely fake is that I find it hard to believe that after watching my video, the myIQ company CEO suddenly had a change of heart so massive it made the Grinch's new heart look like a kidney bean. They've already proven they're willing to lie to users in order to make money, so morality isn't exactly an issue. What if they were only doing this to make their quiz appear more legitimate to potential victims? Finally, the website still claims that the average IQ of tests taken that day is in the 120s, when in reality, if the tests were legitimate at all, it should be pretty close to 100. So I think this shows that the final results are still very inaccurate and focus more on flattering the user rather than being honest. Even if the quiz were now suddenly extremely accurate, there's still no reason to pay any amount of money for an online IQ test. There already are fairly accurate IQ tests online that you can receive the results from for free, and if you truly want an accurate score, just pay for a real IQ test in real life. myIQ tries to justify their $30 a month subscription service by saying that they also provide other services, but these services are a wimpy excuse at best. This is something I'm gonna go more in depth into in part 2, so I don't want to spoil too much right now, but trust me, the subscription is absolutely not worth $1 a day. Although I couldn't get the quiz to complete, due to my epic hacker knowledge, I realized that since the myIQ URL changes after you submit your quiz, you can actually force yourself back onto regularly scheduled programming by simply typing in myiq.com/analyzing into your browser. This even still works if you have no previous progress saved, which just further proves that the analysis screen is completely fabricated. This doesn't necessarily prove that the quiz is fake, but it doesn't make them look any better either. This screen is still the exact same, so I'll move on. On the original quiz, right after entering your email and right before payment, what I called the scummiest pop-up of them all would appear. It reads, "Built with the standard of excellence," and then shows a picture of 5 of the Ivy League schools along with Oxford. This heavily implies that the institutions listed endorse myIQ to some extent, but if you read the tiny text at the bottom of the screen, it clarifies that institutions shown are not affiliated with or endorsing myIQ. This was definitely one of the worst parts of the entire website previously, and I'm glad to say that it appears to be completely gone now. Despite being unable to view a small portion of the quiz, I was still able to access the original point that the Ivy League pop-up was located at. It's possible that the pop-up was moved to that small section I couldn't access, but I really doubt it. Finally, I do want to mention that they completely revamped the payment screen, and now it literally forces the user to acknowledge that they will be auto-enrolled into a $30 monthly subscription. The fact that they're a lot more upfront about their subscription switch up is something I really respect from them, but considering the fact that their IQ test is most likely still fake, I would still call their service a scam, or at best, just something not worth paying for. Regardless of how legitimate their services are, I'm really glad that I was able to convince myIQ to become more transparent about their practices. It feels good that I was able to use my YouTube channel to have a legitimate positive impact on the world. For the record, let it be known that I also think this situation is extremely hilarious. When I first connected the dots, I honestly just started laughing because the implications are incredibly amusing. I imagine some sweaty, panicky myIQ intern rushing into his boss's office with his phone in hand, wordly uttering a, "Boss, you've gotta see this, gulp!" Then the boss going, "Let me see." Then the boss's chair creaking as he leans forward to get a closer look at the phone. And then all of the dramatic tension is immediately thrown out the window as he sees a college-age blue shark furry superimposed on top of an Earthbound battle background talking about why YouTube ads are bad. It's just way too funny to me. And it gets even better when you realize that they probably watched the entire video and took notes the entire time too. Well, don't you worry your little face off, my dear sweaty intern. I've got another bun in the oven. It should be coming out in either late August or early September. It really depends how much DaVinci Resolve decides it hates me this month. Until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.